So this viral post is going around X saying that Lovable is dead, and Theo just dropped a video with the exact same title. Now that video breaks down the state of vibe coding very well, but I wanted to give you my perspective, because if you're building an app in Lovable or Bolt or using any of these AI vibe coding tools, you might be freaking out that it's about to end. And so in this video, I want to break down the state of vibe coding in 2025, give you my honest take on the industry and where I think it's going, and also to help you out if you are building with Lovable or Bolt, what you need to learn and how to move forwards. If you don't know me, my name is Chris, and for the last 15 years I've been designing apps and advising startups on product and design. And with that said, let's break down the state of vibe coding in a bit more detail.
Build great product. Build great product.
So if you've been on X recently and followed anything to do with Lovable, you might have seen this graph that was posted. So the whole thing is really saying like, is Lovable dying? And it's all about the web traffic for popular vibe coding tools. Now this is purely traffic. So Cross Data is a YC backed company that focuses on providing companies with trusted data for their business. And they posted this image basically showing that the traffic for the last few months for Lovable has gone down massively. That's 35 million to just under 20 million, which is almost half of their web traffic. Now, if you just see this, it seems pretty concerning. But Anton, who is the founder of Lovable, actually just followed it up with this post saying, every few months, social media says Lovable is dying. I'm proud to announce we're dying again. And this graph basically showing new customers in the same time period. So even though maybe the web traffic has gone down, the actual number of paying customers to Lovable has continued to go up, and also around here has started to like increase even more over time. And my hypothesis on this, and this is similar to other people here really, is that the traffic over the summer is really generated by a lot of paid ads, a lot of advertising and marketing on Lovable's behalf. And then all of those people who have maybe tried the platform and realized that it's a bit more complicated than they expected, or it gave them a bunch of errors and bugs, then just bounced and they didn't use Lovable anymore, which I can imagine would be completely fair. But what I want to talk about today, more than this, is my perspective on the state of vibe coding tools, whether I think these tools are actually going to stick around for the long run, and also where they're likely to go in the future. Now, nobody can predict the future with this stuff. It's completely unknown. We don't even know the full capabilities of AI or what AI is going to become in the next few years. So trying to predict this stuff is really, really difficult, and take everything that I say with a grain of salt. But this is kind of my perspective on where the vibe coding industry is going, based on this information that maybe the attention is going down for some of these platforms, but the actual number of paying customers is going up. So to me, that means they're starting to find the right sort of target customer for these platforms, but actually the attention and the hype that was generated around it, and maybe the marketing on the side of you can build any app in minutes, was actually the wrong take. And I also see a lot of problem with some of these videos that like clone specific apps, or try and just say, oh, you can clone any app in minutes and then start making money, because it's all kind of focusing on this like low effort entry point into basically trying to make money with these tools. And I think anything that you build, you have to put in a little bit of effort, and there's always a little bit of a learning curve. And so what I wanted to do first was just to break down the current problem and the current experience with vibe coding tools. So if you're using a vibe coding tool like Lovable or Bolt, I think vibe coding is really still going from an experiment to a legitimate tool. Lovable and Bolt have only been around for a year. Bolt has been around for just over a year, and Lovable has been around since I think the 21st of November. So that's not even a year at this point, and they've grown so fast in that time. And it's really like an experiment. It's like, what can we do with this tool? How possible is it to simplify this process of coding and building an app, and to put it in the hands of non-technical people to actually help them build apps? So let's do a new category here. So let's say like, the reality is building is still complex, but just not as complex as it used to be. And I actually think a lot of these platforms are doing a disservice to their users by trying to like cut out all of this complexity by as much as possible. And the right place for these tools is going to be some sort of middle ground here. The reality is also that most people won't use the terminal or dev tools. And so if you're trying to sell like an app building tool to a non-technical person, this is why I think it's really difficult, and I don't think it's the right approach to, I might go back on this over time and I'll have to eat my words, but I don't think the right approach for helping non-technical people to build software businesses is trying to get them to use Claude Code and Cursor. And I actually do think there is potential in simplifying the app building process with these tools. And I think the answer to this is UX and UI, so design. Maybe I'm biased because I come from a design background, but I really think that these tools can stick around for the long run. Think tools like Lovable and Bolt, and that the answer to helping people create value and create apps and actually create businesses from these is going to be user experience and user interface design. And actually, if you look at the stories coming out of these platforms, there are so many people already building apps that have gone on to make money and then turn into actual businesses, even if they do hire developers eventually to actually help build out their product. That's still a starting point for a legitimate software or application business that has grown out of a tool from a non-technical founder, gone on to make life-changing amounts of money for them, and then started their own business helping the people that they wanted to help with that idea. And so I think there's a huge place in the market for tools like Bolt and Lovable, and I don't think they're going to die at all. But I don't think vibe coding is dead. I just think that the tools that we're using, like Lovable, like Bolt, these tools have to evolve to meet the market needs and to actually find the right spot where they're going to be able to help people build apps, get around the issues that people are experiencing, and actually guide them through that process a bit more. And it might be not all on the platforms to actually do that. And so let's break down what the current experience is right now. So I think this, for a lot of people, is the current experience. You have an app idea, you go to build the app with a tool like Lovable or Bolt, and then you get a load of bugs. You can't test it properly, you don't know how to review the code, you don't know what to do, you're nowhere near to launching, you use up a ton of tokens, and it's super frustrating. So it's like, I can't launch my app, it doesn't work, it's really frustrating, and then I just give up, basically. So I think that's, for like probably 90% of the people using these tools, that's probably the experience that you're getting. This is part of the reason why I created this channel, Build Great Products, is to help people to build great apps and software businesses, even if you're non-technical. And for technical people, there's a lot of support here as well. And I truly think that whatever the path that we take to get there, that there is going to be a huge number of non-technical founders, solo businesses, and small teams who will genuinely vibe code their own applications that end up making money and then go on to build businesses off the back of those. Now, I'm not saying that you can vibe code an application that can scale to millions of users and support complex architecture and all of these complex things without having a developer. There's a massive space in the market still for developers and development skills. But the fact that now it's possible for non-technical founders to generate hundreds of thousands in revenue from vibe coding apps using these tools, and there are examples of that in the market, just shows the potential, and essentially the potential with tools that aren't even really mature yet. They're still very much in this experiment or like infancy stage. And so what do I think the actual path to being successful with vibe coding is? So I think there's a few extra bits that we want to consider in here. So currently I've got an app idea, let's go and build it. And then I get a load of bugs. Okay, so the actual path to be successful with vibe coding, I think, is I've got an app idea, or I use a tool to help me find an app idea. So let's say use a tool to find an app idea. I then have to turn that idea into something worth building. This is a missing part of the process for the majority of people building apps with tools like Lovable and Bolt, is that they have an app idea and they think that's the thing that they should build, and then you're failing at the first hurdle, basically. If you don't spend a bit of time planning out your idea, improving that idea, and I have videos on the channel, and I also talk about this a lot in my community with people as well, and you can improve your idea basically by making it for a specific customer, by making it solve a specific problem, and by making it solve a more painful problem, by targeting a specific industry, or by reducing the amount of time that it takes someone using your app to actually get value out of it. And so there are these key ways to improve your idea before you start building it, and also planning your app out. Planning what should be my minimum viable product, what should be my one key feature that I'm building, what is the requirements for this application. Those things are super important before you actually go in to start building it, and having a prompt framework that you know works when you're building in these tools. Now, it's not going to work 100% of the time. I'm certainly not guaranteeing that, but there are ways that you can make it much easier to actually build your app when you get there. And this is something that these tools are trying to help out with more and more. And also there is beginning to get more and more content on places like YouTube, on my channel, and on other people's channels as well. Then you would go into building your app idea using a tool like Lovable or Bolt or any other vibe coding platform. Quick break in the episode to talk about my community for people who are building apps with AI and want to actually launch their app and get real customers. It's called the AI App Builders Academy. So if you're building an AI app with Bolt or Lovable or Cursor or any of these AI tools and you actually want to make a profit and launch your app, then this is the community for you. Inside you'll get access to a community of other builders as well as my 30-day app course helping you go from idea to app to a profitable launch in just 30 days. You'll also get access to weekly calls with live workshops and training as well as all of my startup frameworks and resources and 24/7 support from the community to help you answer any questions or problems you're having with building and launching your AI app. So if you're building an app with AI and you actually want to make a profit and launch your app, then head over to school.com/AI apps to find out more. I'll see you there. And again, these tools aren't quite there yet, so the user experience isn't 100%. They all have slightly different features. They all simplify the developer workflow in a slightly different way. We haven't found the right user experience for this non-technical development workflow or like vibe coding workflow yet. Claude Code, it runs in terminal, that's super scary. That's closer to the right sort of workflow, but it's very, very technical for non-technical people. Bolt and Lovable have a lot of great features, but they also have their own little quirks and ways of presenting stuff. Tools like Leap are really, really good for more technical users and follow a more traditional development workflow, but there's still limitations with that platform as well. And so it's a little bit of a minefield as to like which platform to use. And we're going to get to a better point with these tools eventually as they begin to mature. The next step here, which is really where you start to, after you start building your app, you get a load of bugs, can't review the code, you don't even know what the code is, you're unable to test it, you don't really know how to test. And I think there's a few ways that we're going to figure out this part of the equation here. One of them is going to be through AI, more like AI testing and AI code reviews, and actually having tools that will be able to check the quality of our code, review our code, and guide us through testing our application without us having to know exactly everything that we're doing and without us having to be a developer and actually get in the code as well. Now, this might be like a oversimplification on my side as a non-technical person because this part is incredibly complex and technical, and I know that from working with developers for the last 15 years, but I really think we can get there with a lot of these tools. The second part of this as well, I think, is also guidance and support in a more like service-based capacity or like a one-on-one capacity with services that offer developer support to actually guide you through building an app, and maybe that's even built into these platforms at some point as well. I know there's an app building platform called Flute, which actually gives you customer support one-on-one when you're building your app, and that's one of their points of difference. So I can see like all of these kind of features beginning to converge across all of these different tools to actually help people get to the point where they can legitimately deploy and launch their app and start getting paying customers. And then the two steps after this point, which I don't think any platform is really doing well at the moment, is how you launch your app and then how you market and grow it as a business. And I think these things are still really, really difficult because this is not necessarily about vibe coding. This is about how do I actually build something that people are going to want? How do I create an app that people are going to want to use? How do I deploy it to my domain and then scale that? How do I have the confidence to actually know that when people come on and use my app, it can handle 100 or 1,000 users at the same time? And how do I actually build a business around this thing that I'm doing? Now, it's beneficial for all these platforms to help people to be able to do that because ultimately those success stories help support the growth of those platforms. And there's always going to be a certain amount of people who come in this aspirational phase and just want to try the tool out because of novelty, which is one of the points that Theo covered really well in his video, which I think I totally agree with, that there's a lot of novelty value to these tools at the moment. Tools like Lovable and Bolt. Can I clone Netflix really quickly? Yes, you can. I also think there's a percentage of those people, but I also think there's a percentage of people who are going onto those platforms who are legitimately really well placed to actually build an application that can really solve a problem for a specific type of person or in a specific type of industry. And I have calls every single week with people in my community who have just joined who have incredible app ideas that can legitimately solve really big problems for customers or for industries, but they just don't have the technical know-how to get there. They're willing to put in the effort and actually struggle through this process to get to an end result where they can actually deliver an app. app, but the unfortunate reality is that a percentage of those, without the support that they need, without the community that they need, without the tools being mature enough to actually help them build their app, there's a percentage of those people who will just actually never build the app or the software that they had in mind. And that to me is a massive shame. And I want to help as many people actually go through this process and build something meaningful as possible. And I think it's 100% doable, even with the tools now, to go through this process and actually vibe code a full application that you could launch and get paying customers on. And there's another bit that I want to add in here as well, is that vibe coding is also useful beyond just traditional startups or business setups. So you can use vibe coding tools for things like prototyping, for personal apps, for business apps, and maybe just for fun. And where I think this is going to develop over time is essentially to move away from these tools that kind of promise to build anything, like build any sort of app, and more towards like specific tools for specific use cases. So a vibe coding platform to build personal apps, a vibe coding platform to build business apps, a vibe coding platform to build games, a vibe coding platform for just prototyping, which is kind of what V0 is really. I think these specific tools for specific use cases are going to emerge more and more over time, but they won't be as flashy or hyped as some of these big names at the moment. And so now we've gone through the actual path to be successful with vibe coding, I want to answer this question. So are tools like Lovable and Bolt doomed to fail? Because maybe they are only focusing on the novelty value. Maybe they are only toys just to help non-developers feel like, oh, maybe I'm being a developer for a bit. Now, I don't believe that. I actually believe that these tools are a great entry point to building a different type of business, and it puts the power in people's hands to actually solve a vast number of problems that can be solved with software that we just didn't have the time or capability or resources to be able to build before. But the problem is, and the concerns that I have about these platforms like Lovable and Bolt, is this hype cycle of saying that you can build anything in minutes. But the reality is that it's actually quite a bit more difficult. But just because it's more difficult, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you need more support. Basically, this sets the wrong expectation. It's like the expectation doesn't meet what people experience when they come in and use the product and start getting bugs and start coming up against walls. And I think the novelty of just cloning something like Uber or Netflix is meaningless to me. You can't replicate their businesses. You can't replicate their strategy or the people that they have working for them, their marketing plan, their growth plan. Like, you're not going to create a business like that. The idea that you can create something like that quickly is a great idea, but it's not a legitimate path to actually building an application that's going to turn into a business if you want to build that. And then my other concern here is a lot of these AI vibe coding tools are oversimplifying these complex concepts, basically. So it's this oversimplification, and I've used this big word here, so let's get rid of that to simplify it. This oversimplification of complex concepts is taking it too far, and it's almost saying like, oh yeah, database. Yeah, don't worry about that. We'll handle it. It's all good. Yeah, no, don't even look at the database. Yeah, don't worry. We've got a database, so that's all you need to know. And I think this is doing these platforms a disservice. And instead of saying just like, oh yeah, don't worry about it, mate, we've got it covered, I think the right path is actually to help guide people through that, even if it's a simpler version, and allow them to access the complexity if they want to, but just simplify the experience of engaging with that thing. So I think what we don't need to do is just to like hide these things that are happening and have like a database with like a green tick next to it. I think what we need to do is have like a database with all of your elements of your database exposed if you want to go and dig into your database, and present it in a user experience and a user interface that is clean and easy to read and easy to understand, with a guided way of helping you understand that in a step-by-step basis in order to build that into your app better. And so these are the fixes that I think we need in this industry. Firstly, I think these tools should be positioned not as like build an app in minutes. I think these should be positioned as legitimate tools for non-technical builders. And this is actually, again, why I really liked the positioning of Leap. And I also like Bolt a lot as well, because Bolt builds in a lot of complex features into that tool, and Leap is actually like a much more technical kind of vibe coding tool that doesn't shy away from showing you the complexity and giving you access to it if you want. Now, they don't do a great amount of stuff on like guiding you through that and actually making it easy to understand, although the user experience for Leap is getting much better, and they've added tons more stuff that is super helpful for people. This is not an ad for Leap, by the way. I just really like that platform. But even if you use Leap, it's still complex and you need other things to support you along that journey. The other fixes here, I think, will be doubling down on helping people build things that work. So I think giving people the support that they need to actually build something that works, rather than just focusing on this, because we're in this kind of like hyper growth stage of this industry where these companies are growing at a massive rate, super fast. Lovable has grown like crazy in less than a year. All the attention for these tools and for these companies is on acquiring market share as quickly as possible, and the way to acquire market share as quickly as possible is to get as much attention and hype built around their product as possible, and the best way to do that is through more kind of clickbaity marketing slogans and positioning and expectations. And so build an app in minutes is a great way to get a ton of attention, but the long-term play here is actually positioning as a legitimate tool for non-technical builders that continues to deliver success for people and create successful businesses, and then developing that over many years alongside the advancements in AI. And then the last one here, I think, is to use great user experience designed to simplify the complexity without hiding it, to actually position yourself as a legitimate tool with access to all of these complex concepts, but just use the user experience layer and the user interface layer to make that as simple and guided and as supported for the user as possible. One of the things that I made sure to include in my course to help people build their first app in 21 days over on my community was the app building fundamentals. So breaking down what the building blocks of apps are to actually make them work. Things like database, authentication, APIs, and your front end and back end, and why it's important to know those concepts. Because I do think having access to that and knowing how it works is really important. But the massive opportunity for these tools to develop is to apply that kind of user experience and user interface layer on top of the complexity in order to make it super accessible for people. And the big kind of thing that I want to mention here is I think there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people out there with genuinely good app and business ideas who these tools can genuinely help, but they're just not there yet. But I do think they will get there. And so vibe coding for me is most certainly not dead. And vibe coding for me will also help thousands of people to create applications, build software businesses, and really change their lives through the ability to just start this stuff yourself and actually get building something that genuinely solves a problem and will help people. And so what does the industry have to do better? So I wanted to go through like a few things I think the vibe coding industry, let's say, what does vibe coding have to do better? And we're very early stage with this vibe coding stuff. So I think in order to help people through this actual path to be successful with vibe coding, I think there's a few things that we need to help people with here. And these are things that I am focused on trying to help people as much as possible with on this channel. So if you want help with these and you do have an app idea that you're building, do subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be creating content on this stuff for the long term. And I've seen people build real apps and actually get customers with them. So I know that this can work if you do it right. The first thing I think that we have to do better in this vibe coding space is to help people to find better ideas and refine existing ideas. So that idea of taking an idea that you have and finding the best possible execution of that idea, not just building something straight away, but helping people improve that idea to the point where this could be a viable business if you built it. And those are through things like market research, product strategy, market validation, all of those sorts of things that go into actually validating a business idea before you start building it. And there are tools already like this. So there are tools like Idea Browser and App Canvas. App Canvas is my app that I've just launched, which basically helps you go from your initial idea to finding your customer persona, validating your idea in the market, and then creating all the prompts you need to actually help you build your app. And there's also a ton of different courses and content on this. And this is also part of my course in my community as well, where I teach you how to actually turn your idea into something that's worth building. Also, vibe coding has to help people enjoy the entire experience better. So one of the issues with vibe coding tools at the moment is that they set this expectation. Basically, they set you up to fail because they say build an app in minutes and launch it, but you can't actually really do that. The expectation is there that I can do this in just minutes on my lunch break, and then I actually start doing it, hit a load of bugs, I don't understand the concepts, I can't launch my app, and then I just quit and basically don't pay again and churn on the subscription. And so I think here We can give people like these tools can have better user experience. We can also help people with guided support. So these platforms can guide people through this creation process, and also just removing the pain points in that app creation journey. And I would say also like not being afraid to make complexity visible. So not hiding that complexity, but just helping people to understand the concepts so they can actually start to prompt better, to build better apps, and to use these tools better. Because even now they do work, and they have worked for some people building app businesses, even if they've gone on to hire developers. And in the future, they're only going to get more and more capable as well. The next thing that I think these vibe coding tools can do better is to help people with bugs, code reviews, and the hard stuff, basically. So database, authentication, payments, testing, all of that sort of stuff. The more that we can help people, guide people through that process, and there are tools out there that do this, and some of the platforms have built-in features to like start debugging your app or have an agent like start testing your app, but these are still kind of like a bit hit and miss and don't always work 100% of the time. And there's also that missing step of like the knowledge on the user's part to know, when do I need to do this? When should I test this feature? When should I test payments myself versus when should I get an agent to test something? All of these kind of questions are still really difficult questions to solve. And so I think guided support and frameworks here, tools like CodeRabbit and built-in debugging and code reviews for vibe coding tools will help massively. And we're kind of going down that path already anyway. Another thing that vibe coding has to do better is to give people the confidence that what they're building is actually set up correctly, and is, if it's not ready to launch, at least the parts of it are working correctly. So these platforms need to do a better job of like giving me some confidence that as I'm building this, I'm doing it the right way or I'm doing it the wrong way. We need user feedback to understand like, am I going down the wrong path here? And one of the ways that people often get stuck at the moment is that they start prompting and building their app and basically find that they're like rinsing through tokens super quickly because they don't know what they should be prompting. They don't know how to prompt. They don't know if this bug can be fixed. They don't know when to discard the change or start again. They don't know when to restore a previous checkpoint in the chat. They don't know when to get the agent to test stuff for them or when to test it themselves. They don't know how to actually test it. They don't know what functionality needs to be working. And so there's so many questions here that are just, it's almost overwhelming and impossible to answer for people. So we need to help people by giving them confidence that they're doing it the right way, that they're following the right process. And the way that we can do that, I think, is through a bunch of different methods. So AI testing or reviewing tools, or tools in these platforms that are actually built for code review and security review and things like that, as well as better UX to kind of guide you through like, is this a good prompt? Is this a bad prompt? What type of prompt do you need to write here? Helping people to enhance their prompt, giving people guidance around when they should continue trying to debug or go back to a previous checkpoint and start again. For example, if we had a feature in these apps like Lovable and Bolt to say like, oh, it looks like you've tried to fix this bug 4 times. Do you want to restore a previous checkpoint, or do you want to keep trying to fix this? Those small little things help massively in giving people the confidence to know that they are using these tools in the correct way and that they're actually going to be able to build the thing that they have in their head. We can also provide things like support from developers as a service, like I mentioned earlier. Communities, courses, and content help massively. And again, I'm not trying to harp on about it, but that's why I built my community, to help people with this, is to give people the confidence that they're building the right thing, they're building in the right direction. And the last thing that I think vibe coding needs to do better is to help people actually make money from what they build, or just finish the thing. At the moment, people get like stuck halfway. We're not even finishing the things that we want to create here. And so the more that we can actually get people to feel like they have a finished product, the more likely they are going to be to stay on these platforms, the more that these platforms like Lovable and Bolt are going to continue to grow, to help people finish the thing that they're building, to actually be able to turn that into a business and make money. And this is not just on these platforms to be able to do this right, but this is also on a ton of things that can help in this space. And again, a huge reason why I created this channel. So courses and content and communities on marketing, business, and growth that support this kind of app building journey, and guided support from people who have done it before as well, to see other people who have vibe coded apps and built them without knowing a single line of code, and also started to make money from people, again, even if they've scaled them to businesses with real developers over time, because that skill is still so invaluable for this, and actually growing a business from that application that you launch. And so before we finish up on the video here, I just want to break down a few things that you can do right now to actually start filling in these gaps here in this kind of successful vibe coding journey, to kind of help you out as you're starting to build your app idea, as you're thinking about, What tool should I use? Is my app idea good enough? Should I start building it with Bolt or Lovable? How do I actually prompt these tools? How do I fix all of my bugs that I'm getting? There are some tools to kind of help you do that. So to start off with, there are great tools out there to find really good ideas, like Idea Browser, like App Canvas. App Canvas, basically you'll be able to put in your kind of interest or your hobby and it will generate you some ideas that you can then start validating in the market and building out on that platform. And Idea Browser is a great way of just finding validated ideas already with a ton of research around them. That's from Greg Eisenberg. I think that's a great product. CodeRabbit. There are other tools as well for the other parts of this process that are difficult. So like QA, bug fixing, testing, tools like CodeRabbit that you can start using alongside tools like Lovable and Bolt before they actually build these kind of bug fixing and code review capabilities themselves or integrate with someone to offer that on the platform, because I think they are going in that direction. They've already showed that when Bolt and Lovable recently integrated Supabase as a partner into their application. So they're already kind of going down this path. Content, I think content is a massive help for people building with these AI tools and vibe coding their apps using tools like Lovable and Bolt. Things like this channel, you have people like Riley Brown, Chris Rorock, Greg Eisenberg, your average tech pro, Theo, obviously from a more kind of like development standpoint, but he's an investor in some of these tools as well. So he is kind of helping that narrative in the conversation as well. And then you also have a bunch of communities out there that can really support you on your app building journey as well, because it is difficult, it is tough. And if you do want to push through that, there are ways that you can do it easily. It's just about finding the right places to hang out in so that you get the right knowledge that you need at the right time and you can ask any questions that you have. So I have a community on School called the AI App Builders Academy, which you can find out more about if you go to school.com/AI apps. There are also Discord channels for most of these app building platforms out there. So Bolt has a really good Discord I know that you can jump on. Leap has one as well. And there are many other communities. Just search for them of people building apps so that you can find the support that you need on this journey, because ultimately vibe coding isn't dead. It's just not quite ready yet. And I think this is the key message that I want to leave you with here, is that I don't think these platforms are going to die. And I think there's a huge amount of value in allowing people to build applications that can turn into businesses, even if they're non-technical, because a lot of these people have great ideas for apps and great ideas for software that solve real problems. But the actual tools that we're using at the moment, they're not 100% there yet. They're not quite ready. They're still going through that kind of awkward young adolescent teenage phase where they're not really quite figured out like the right direction to go. They're all about getting attention and hype and just bringing as many people to the platform as possible to capture that market share in the early days. And we're going to see a ton of developments for these platforms over time, even if that attention does die down a little bit, like we saw in the initial graph at the beginning of this video, where the attention maybe for these platforms is going down, but the actual number of people using them and getting successful results from them is only increasing. So is vibe coding dead? Absolutely not. And I think these vibe coding tools are just in their infancy in terms of maturity. There are so many stories out there of people who have built apps or software using these vibe coding tools and then gone to turn that into an actual business that I can't really imagine a future where less people would actually do that, only more. And I think even if the hype cycle of these tools like Lovable and Bolt is dying down, the actual number of people who are using them in meaningful and real ways is only increasing. And there's a massive number of people out there who have great ideas, a really strong appetite to learn, and also the ability to not be scared of these more technical concepts and considerations that you have to have when you build an app. And also there's just thousands of people out there who will use these tools in a slightly different way than actually just building an app and turning that into a business. People will use it for prototyping, people will use it just for fun, to build personal apps, or even on teams in businesses to automate certain tasks. And so in my opinion, we're only just tapping into the start of the value that we're going to be able to get out of these tools in the future. I know I've harped on about my community a little bit in this video as well, bit of a shameless plug, but the whole point I set up this channel and the whole reason that I started my community was to help people going through this process to use these tools to actually build something meaningful, to solve problems for people, and even turn it into a business if they want to. And so as always, you can check it out over at school.com/AI apps. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.
Build great product. Build great product.